Om Swaha. In this tape, I wanted to talk about self-confidence in the first house, the rising sign. This can be very important because we know that if we don't have any self-confidence in life, we're not going to get too far, are we? It's good to have benefics in the first house. So if you have Venus, the moon, Jupiter are considered benefics, especially in Vedic astrology. That would be very good to have them in the first house. If you have malefics in the first house, such as Saturn and Mars, or the South Node, they call that Ketu in the Vedic, that may be a problem because you may feel more obstacles, Saturn, more argumentative, Mars. More stuck in the past, South Node. So it's better to have the North Node, or what they call Rahu in the Vedic, in that first house. The sign that rules the first house, your rising sign. Look at the planet that rules that sign and how it's operating in your chart. Example, for me, I have Cancer rising in the Western chart. And therefore the moon rules my rising sign. Which would make me more sensitive. But the moon is in Leo in the second house. Unfortunately, I have Uranus conjunct the moon, and Uranus is forming a T-square in my chart. So I have Uranus opposing from the second house to the eighth house, opposing Venus, and both those planets are squaring into the fifth house, which I have the North Node, Neptune, and Jupiter, all in Scorpio in the fifth. So that's going to create less confidence in myself. Luckily, I have my moon in Leo, which is and I have my sun elevated in the ninth house in Pisces, so because the sun's elevated. So you have to look at all these different variations. The first house, because it's a rising sign, you can only get that through your exact birth time. That determines, that's like the window into the whole chart. So it's the most important, but it's not the only thing, but it is very, very important. So if let's say you have Aries rising, you would have to look at Mars and see how Mars is integrating into the rest of the chart. Having planets in the first house is ideal because even if it's malefics, because it gives personality, it gives charisma, it gives someone the opportunity to be more outgoing, and confident. Generally, the air and the fire signs do better on this planet than the earth and the water signs. The exception would be Capricorn is hardworking, so they would be good. The earth signs tend to be good with the physical world because they're earth, but the air and the fire signs tend to have more confidence. They're more outgoing. They tend to let the past roll off their shoulders more, and they move on from things a lot more quickly. The earth and the water signs tend to hang on to things more and tend to let life get the best of them, and it kind of weighing down, unless there's something else in the rest of the chart. Because if you have a nice balance, but I think the most thing to look at, the topic of this video, is self-confidence in the first house. The best things to look at are the rising sign, the planet that rules the rising sign, and see how it's operating, how it's having a relationship with the rest of the planets. And if it's more trines and sextiles, it's going to be better than squares and oppositions. Conjunction can be good, but it just depends on what house it falls in. So look at those aspects of the planet that rules the rising sign. If you have a few planets in the first house, that is very helpful, either way, malefic or benefic. The great benefic, Jupiter, okay? I've seen people with Jupiter conjunct the rising sign. They think everybody else is supposed to be as happy as them all the time, and just, hey, how come you just can't well, it's not that way. I mean, as somebody who has Saturn conjunct a malefic, the rising sign, or in the first house, that can be depressive and kind of heavy and more obstacles, and they have to work on their lives a little bit more harder than others. Look at the benefics, Jupiter, Moon, Venus. If they're in the first house or conjuncting the rising sign, that's very good, and that can help with self-confidence. Mars in the first can help with self-confidence, but sometimes they can be argumentative. So Mars and Saturn, the malefics, okay? Mars can be more depressive, as I've already mentioned. The South Node is getting caught up in the past a little bit more. The North Node is helpful. You're growing within self. You're developing yourself. So I would say the North Node, Jupiter, Venus, Moon, those are very good planets to have in the first house in regards to self-confidence. And so I think that's about it. This is very, and also look at the sun. If the sun is integrating well in the chart, and if it has trines and sextiles, and rather than oppositions and squares, that can be very helpful. The sun is a very important planet. If you have the sun in the first house, that can be very confident with self. So I hope I've covered enough of that, and I wish you the best. Namaste. Click subscribe. If you haven't, let your friends know these are free classes on astrology. Om Swaha.